WrestleMania is supposed to be the biggest weekend of the wrestling calendar, where WWE pulls out all the stops to ensure that the show of shows showcases the very best the company has to offer that year. Wrestling's version of the Super Bowl or the World Cup final, but in 2016, it felt like things couldn't have gone worse. The 2016 edition, WrestleMania 32, was presented in front of a record crowd of 100,000 at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. But even this is disputed, with independent reports making it closer to 80,000, which is still the highest number in WWE history, but not that shiny 100,000 that was marketed. Anyway, 100,000, 80,000, anywhere in between, this was the first Mania ever that ended with a stadium full of angry fans. The show went off the air to a chorus of boos as the hated babyface Roman Reigns defeated Triple H in the main event. And while I wasn't furious, as those live in attendance seemed to be, but I can't say I was overly satisfied either. For me, it wasn't the main event that got me. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, but this was the perfect storm of strange decisions that left so many fans, myself included, wondering what WWE's decision makers were thinking. WrestleMania 32 went on to be voted worst wrestling show of the year by Wrestling Observer newsletter in 2016, and now forever remembered as one to forget. So let's cover what made it so awful. I'll try not to go into too much depth as it's been covered repeatedly, but I want to recap the main bits and the main reasons the reaction was so adverse. The main issues were the horrible booking decisions that gave us results that had no consequences, the pure length of the show, and no fault to WWE here, but the personnel on the show, many stars were hit with injury at a bad time, including Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, John Cena, then couldn't compete at the event. But quickly, let's talk length. It ran from kickoff show and matches to Roman lifting the title over 6 hours. A marathon to get through, especially a marathon when the results were meaningless too. AJ Styles lost his biggest match to date against Chris Jericho, but on the following night at Raw after Mania, he beats Jericho, Owens, and Cesaro in 16 minutes to become #1 contender to Roman's title. And then he was eventually champion by the end of September of 2016. And meanwhile, Jericho, after losing, kind of got lost in the shuffle, had a temporary feud with Dean Ambrose and didn't really do anything of note until more towards WrestleMania 33 with Kevin Owens in the list of Jericho. Zack Ryder won the Intercontinental belt in a ladder match, a highlight of the show. But even that feel-good moment got disregarded because he dropped the title back to The Miz the following night. Ryder would then be sent packing down to the lower mid-card and never win that title again. So much for that. Ambrose was destroyed by Lesnar in that underwhelming no-holds-barred match at Mania. And yep, you guessed it. Ambrose would go on to become WWE Champion in the months that followed, while Lesnar would be squashed by Goldberg, who at that point hadn't wrestled in 12 years and in less than 2 minutes. We love consistent booking. Baron Corbin won a giant trophy and then did nothing. Shane McMahon lost his match with Undertaker with a clearly laid out reward that if he won, he could get control of Raw following Mania. He did get control of Raw. The only issue is that he lost that match at Mania. Great. As for Roman Reigns, he held the title for just under 2.5 months before being real life suspended, which is always good. He then returned and was pushed again, despite the fans still booing his character. Overall, this Mania was a mess. The build was messy, the matches were messy, the consequences were non-existent, and WWE's biggest show of the year had turned into a complete flop. But as the stars returned and the landscape returned to normality, the show quality began to increase. Lots of people remember 2016 very fondly for wrestling, and this could be packaged in one pay-per-view that took place 4 months after Mania 32. Battleground 2016. The flags were waving, the presentation was great, the draft was just kicking in with Mick Foley and Shane McMahon returning as commissioners for Raw and SmackDown Live respectively. The product felt refreshing for the first time in a while, and we were finally getting some payoffs for the big matches we had waited for. Some WrestleMania level matches that really should have happened at WrestleMania 32. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens upon an instant classic and a feud built for WrestleMania. Best man at each other's weddings, tag team partners on the indies, alliance in NXT, an unforgettable turn by Owens, and the legendary feud that followed for the NXT title. Then both ending up in the Royal Rumble match, where Zayn would reignite tensions, throwing his former friend out the ring. This should have set up the Mania blow-off, but instead, they both competed in the Intercontinental title ladder match with no references to their story. They only met again at Payback and both competed in the Money in the Bank ladder match, costing each other the briefcase, which finally gave us what we've been asking for, which was a huge blow-off match at the peak of tensions at Battleground. And what a match this was. If you haven't watched this match, watch it. Everything you would expect from these two, a classic, with my only criticism being it deserved a grander stage. On the same night, we saw many other matchups that many expected would be for WrestleMania. The Wyatt family would finally feud with tag champs The New Day, a matchup that many expected for WrestleMania due to the anticipation for it, and due to the lack of direction for the Wyatt family at that point in 2016. They eventually ended up in a short segment with The Rock rather than any substantial match or story, especially considering Bray literally feuded with The Undertaker at the previous year's WrestleMania. It's a bit of a fall from grace. AJ Styles versus John Cena was a rivalry that many point out was the best of the year in 2016, and the timing of Cena's injury not allowing a match between them to take place on the grandest stage of them all was another letdown of WrestleMania 32. While we didn't get the one-on-one match here, we did get more build with a six-man tag, Cena teaming with the most over tag team on the roster at the time in Enzo Amore and Big Cass against Styles and Gallows and Anderson, the club. Fan favourite Zack Ryder was getting another temporary push at the time with a US title match against Rusev. The Miz and formerly underutilised Darren Young put on a good match. And Sasha Banks brought out the surprise debuting Bayley as her mystery partner to a huge pop to face Charlotte and Dana Brooke. The matches were good, the builds were great, and the consequences actually meant something. But all of this was topped off by the main event we had all been anticipating for WrestleMania that never happened. The Shield Triple Threat. The story, of course, writes itself, but the build and match delivered, and it was just so good, and the fans loved it. Money in the Bank was headlined by a match many wanted to see in Roman versus Seth. Seth won the title. Dean Ambrose, however, had won the briefcase earlier in the night and cashed in, and he won the World Championship. All three Shield members holding the world title in one night. Surely this was setting up the Shield Triple Threat. But it took a slight turn when Roman was suspended, only just back in time for Battleground. Many thought they would throw this off, suspend it, have a bigger build, even cut the match completely. But just before his suspension, Seth and Roman competed for #1 contendership for Dean Ambrose's title, which ended in a double countout, and Ambrose proposed he would defend against both of them at Battleground, and the match was on. Roman wasn't there for the build, of course, but Seth and Dean did an excellent job to build to the main event, putting on title matches every week pretty much. I think they had 2 or 3 matches in the space between Money in the Bank and Battleground, and they just tore the house down every week. We eventually got to the 2016 draft, which took place just before Battleground, which drafted Ambrose to SmackDown, while Rollins and Reigns would go to Raw, adding another tension point to this match where the winner would take the title to their respective brand. It would get the brand commissions involved. It would just add a little bit of depth without Roman there. And when we got to this main event, it was an 18-minute top-class match that delivered. It was worthy of the WrestleMania main event. Everything about it just delivered. Ambrose retained and took the title to SmackDown, ending this classic pay-per-view which delivered on almost everything that the fans wished WrestleMania 32 had done. If you enjoyed today's video and like this style of content, I'll be covering more matches and events from over the years, so let me know what you want to see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.